The guard at Gate 7, Subcommander Thek'vil's mandibles clicked nervously as he reviewed the incident report for the third time. The Terran security guard, Beth, according to her identification badge, sat across from him in the station's security office, casually cleaning her fingernails with what appeared to be a piece of broken ceramic. So Thek'vil began, his translator struggling with the appropriate tone. "You're telling me that 3 Korvaxi Berserkers breached Gate 7, and you talked them down." Beth glanced up from her improvised manicure tool. "Well, mostly talked. Had to get physical with the big one." She shrugged, a gesture that Thek'vil had learned indicated human indifference to significant events. "The coffee maker was acting up again this morning, so I was already cranky." The subcommander's secondary eyes focused on the surveillance footage playing on his terminal. The Korvaxi were notorious throughout the Spiral Arm, 2-meter-tall predators from Korvax Prime. A Class 14 Deathworld where the atmospheric pressure could crush most civilized species, and the native fauna considered fusion plasma a light snack. When they went into battle rage, entire battalions had been known to retreat rather than face them. Yet here was this small Terran female, perhaps 1.6 meters tall and massing maybe 60 kilograms, who had somehow convinced 3 of them to surrender. "The incident report mentions you used de-escalation techniques," Thek'vil continued. "Could you elaborate?" Beth set down her ceramic fragment and leaned back in her chair. "Look, they came through the gate all worked up about something. They started yelling in their language, waving those bone clubs around. Standard tantrum stuff." "Standard tantrum," Thek'vil repeated slowly. In the footage, the lead Korvaxi was demolishing a cargo loader with casual swipes of his weapon. "Yeah, so I walked over and asked what was wrong. Turns out their shipment got delayed in customs, and they'd been stuck on their transport for 18 days eating ration paste." "You ever tried Korvaxi ration paste?" Thek'vil's mandibles tightened. "No. Tastes like fermented sulfur mixed with—" "Actually, that's pretty much what it is." Anyway, they were hangry. Hungry, makes everyone cranky." Beth gestured toward the break room. "So I offered them some of my lunch, had leftover chili from yesterday." The subcommander paused the footage at the moment. Beth returned with a steaming container. The 3 Korvaxi, who moments before had been in full berserker fury, were now sitting cross-legged on the deck like attentive children. "You fed them. Terran cuisine. Just chili, nothing fancy. Though I did warn them it might be a bit spicy." Beth's mouth quirked upward, the human expression called a smile, though it often seemed to appear at the most inappropriate moments. "Probably should have been more specific about that." Thek'vil advanced the footage. The first Korvaxi to taste the chili immediately began what could only be described as a dance of joy, roaring with what the translator helpfully labeled as extreme gustatory pleasure. The other 2 quickly followed suit. "They loved it," Beth continued, "kept asking for more. Apparently Korvaxi have this whole cultural thing about food that burns their mouth being a sign of respect or courage or something. Who knew? So you fed them until they calmed down, more or less, though I had to cut them off after the second helping. Jimmy from Cargo said Korvaxi can eat their own body weight in one sitting if you let them." She paused. "Speaking of which, I'm gonna need to submit a requisition for more beans. And probably some antacid." Thek'vil reviewed the final moments of the footage. The 3 Korvaxi, their berserker rage completely dissolved, were now helping Beth reorganize the cargo containers they had scattered during their initial rampage. The largest one, easily massing 150 kilograms, was carefully stacking boxes under her direction like an eager apprentice. "The big one seems particularly compliant," Thek'vil observed. "Grond, yeah, he's sweet. Turns out he's actually a cargo specialist back on Korvax Prime. Started giving me tips on weight distribution and load balancing." Beth stood and stretched. Pretty useful, actually. We've been doing the dock arrangements all wrong. Grond, that's what I call him. His real name is something like Grothicmore in Deathworld, but that seems excessive for casual conversation. She headed toward the door. Anyway, they're helping out in Bay 12 now. Jimmy's showing them how to operate the heavy lifters. Thek'vil's translator emitted a small error chime as it processed this information. You're allowing 3 Korvaxi Berserkers to operate station equipment. Why not? They know what they're doing, and we're short-staffed anyway. Plus, Grond spotted a hairline fracture in one of the support struts that our sensors missed. Probably saved us from a blowout next week. The sub-commander pulled up the duty roster on his secondary screen. Beth Turner, he noted the proper spelling now, had been on duty for 16 hours straight due to a scheduling mix-up with the overnight shift. By all rights, she should have been exhausted, potentially compromising her judgment when faced with a dangerous situation. Instead, she had solved a major security incident with leftover food and casual conversation. One more question, Thek'vil said as Beth reached the doorway. The report mentions you had to get physical with Grond. What exactly did that entail? Beth paused, looking slightly embarrassed. Well, after he finished the chili, he tried to give me what I guess was a Korvaxi thank you hug. Problem is, they don't really understand that most species can't handle that kind of pressure. So you fought him. More like, redirected him. Did this thing my brother taught me back in high school. It's called judo, I think. Anyway, I used his momentum to flip him over my shoulder. Gentle-like. Thek'vil stared at her. You threw a 150-kilogram Korvaxi Berserker just onto the cushioned cargo mats. Didn't want him to get hurt. Beth's expression grew more serious. He seemed really embarrassed about it afterward. I think the physical correction actually helped establish proper social boundaries. Korvaxi culture is big on respectful dominance displays. Right. That is, Thek'vil consulted his cultural database. Actually accurate, yes. Yeah, so after that we were good. He understood I could handle myself, and I understood he wasn't trying to crush me on purpose. Mutual respect and all that. After Beth left, Thek'vil sat alone in his office, reviewing the footage one more time. 3 Korvaxi Berserkers had breached station security, caused thousands of credits in damage, and posed a legitimate threat to civilian safety. The standard protocol called for emergency lockdown, armed response teams, and potentially lethal force. Instead, a single human security guard had resolved the situation with food, conversation, and what she casually described as high school judo. His comm unit chimed with an incoming message from the station administrator. Sub-Commander, pleased to report productivity in Bay 12 is up 43% today. The Korvaxi volunteers are proving extremely helpful. Recommend we consider extended cultural exchange programs. Also, please approve additional food budget for security. Apparently we need more chili ingredients for future diplomatic incidents. Thek'vil's mandibles clicked again, but this time with what he was learning to recognize as amusement. He pulled up Beth's personnel file, noting her previous assignments. 3 years on Titan Station, where she had apparently mediated a dispute between rival mining crews by organizing a competitive eating contest. 2 years on Europa Base, where she had resolved a smuggling ring by convincing them to switch to legitimate cargo transport after pointing out the better profit margins. Her supervisor evaluations were consistent. Unconventional methods, excellent results. Somehow always has snacks. A priority alert flashed on his screen. Another security situation at Gate 15, this time involving a group of Thrakari trade delegates who were apparently extremely agitated about customs procedures. Thek'vil opened the comm channel. Security to Gate 15, please respond. Beth's voice crackled through the speaker. Already on it, Sub-Commander. Bringing coffee and those pastry things from the commissary. The Thrakari are a desert species, right? Probably just dehydrated. That's probably correct, yes. Cool, I'll grab some of those electrolyte packets too. And maybe see if Jimmy has any more of those sweet rolls from this morning. Nothing says welcome to the station like proper hospitality. The comm clicked off, leaving Thek'vil alone with his thoughts. In his 40 years of security work across 12 different installations, he had never encountered anything like Terran security protocols. They seemed to operate on the assumption that most problems could be solved with food, conversation, and what they called basic human decency. The truly remarkable thing was how consistently it worked. His terminal chimed with another message, this one from the Korvaxi transport captain. Sub-Commander Thek'vil, our deepest gratitude for the exceptional treatment received by our crew. Guard Beth has extended invitation for regular supply runs to this station. We have never encountered such understanding of Korvaxi cultural needs. Please convey our thanks and inform her that we will bring proper Korvaxi appreciation gifts on next visit, specifically requesting more spicy human foods for cultural exchange. Transport Captain Vrakthal. Thek'vil looked out through his office viewport at Bay 12, where 3 massive Korvaxi were carefully maneuvering cargo containers under Jimmy's enthusiastic direction. Grond appeared to be teaching the human some kind of traditional Korvaxi lifting technique, while the other 2 were engaged in what looked suspiciously like a collaborative effort to optimize the entire bay's organization system. When he had first received his assignment to this station, Thek'vil had expected to spend his time managing the usual problems: drunk traders, minor smuggling, occasional equipment failures. He had not expected to document the systematic redefinition of interspecies relations through the application of Terran lunch foods. His comm unit chimed again. Sub-Commander, it was Beth. Everything's settled at Gate 15. Turns out the Thrakari delegates were just worried about their cargo getting delayed like the Korvaxi shipment yesterday. I explained our new efficiency improvements and showed them the work Grond's team is doing. They seemed pretty impressed. Any incidents? Nah, all good, though they did ask if we could arrange for some kind of regular Terran food service. Apparently word is getting around about the chili. There was a pause. Might want to think about expanding the commissary. I have a feeling we're gonna be getting a lot more repeat customers. Thek'vil was about to respond when his proximity alerts activated. A new ship was requesting emergency docking, Solmari military transport, reporting engine failure and requesting immediate assistance. His mandibles clicked in concern. The Solmari were known for their precision engineering. If they were calling emergency protocols, the situation was genuinely serious. Beth, we have a priority docking at Bay 7. Solmari military transport with engine problems. Copy that. Heading over now. 20 minutes later, Thek'vil found himself standing on the observation deck overlooking Bay 7, watching what could only be described as controlled chaos. The Solmari transport had limped into dock trailing sparks and venting coolant from 3 different systems. Emergency response teams were standing by, but somehow Beth had already reached the scene. She was currently lying on her back underneath the transport's main engine housing, her legs sticking out at an odd angle while mechanical tools clinked and sparked around her. 2 Solmari technicians, beings whose species had elevated engineering to an art form, were crouched nearby, apparently taking notes. The problem, Beth's voice echoed from beneath the engine, is that your primary coolant line is interfacing with your backup power, coupling through this little junction here, see. One of the Solmari, senior engineer Kethmari, according to Thek'vil's readout, leaned closer. But the technical specifications clearly indicate that configuration should be impossible. The tolerances are. Yeah, that's what I thought too. There was a metallic clang. But look at this mounting bracket. See how it's been micro-welded. Someone did field repairs at some point and didn't account for thermal expansion. Every time your engines heat up, this bracket shifts maybe half a millimeter, which puts pressure on the coolant line, which creates a feedback loop with your power systems. Thek'vil watched as Beth slid out from under the engine, her uniform now decorated with various mechanical fluids. She pointed to a component that, to his untrained eye, looked identical to every other mechanical component in the vicinity. Easy fix, though. We just need to replace the bracket with something that has a little more give. Got any flexible mounting hardware in your spare parts kit? Senior engineer Kethmori's optical sensors flickered, the Velthari equivalent of blinking in surprise. You diagnosed this in how long? Maybe 10 minutes. The scorch pattern was pretty obvious once you knew what to look for. Beth wiped her hands on what appeared to be a spare uniform jacket. Plus, I've seen this kind of jury-rigged repair before. My dad used to do similar patches on farm equipment back home. Same principle, different scale. Farm equipment, Kethmori repeated slowly. Yeah, tractors mostly. Amazing what you can keep running with the right attitude and some creative problem-solving. Beth turned to the second technician. You got that mounting hardware. What followed was perhaps the most surreal repair operation Thek'vil had ever witnessed. Beth, a human security guard with apparent agricultural equipment experience, was directing two of the galaxy's most skilled engineers in the repair of a military transport, using what appeared to be improvised techniques and casual observations. Try tightening that coupling there, no, the other way. Good. Now when you reconnect the power feed, make sure the conduit has some slack. You want it to be able to move without creating stress points. The Solmari worked with the focused intensity their species was known for, but they were clearly following Beth's guidance. More remarkably, her suggestions were proving not just workable, but elegant in their simplicity. How did you know to check the thermal expansion patterns? Kethmori asked as they completed the final connections. Beth shrugged. Metal expands when it heats up. Seemed like the most likely cause of intermittent problems. She paused to accept a steaming cup from Jimmy, who had appeared with what looked like a mobile coffee service. Thanks, Jim. You're a lifesaver. No problem. Figured you'd need the caffeine. Jimmy glanced at the Velthari engineers. You folks want anything? Got coffee, tea, some of those protein bars the traders like. Thek'vil observed this exchange with growing fascination. Somehow, a major engineering crisis had been resolved in under an hour. And now, the humans were offering refreshments to the aliens, whose ship they had just repaired. The Solmari, normally reserved to the point of being standoffish, were actually accepting the offered beverages. This coffee, Kethmori said after a tentative sip, it contains stimulants. Caffeine, yeah, nothing too strong. Beth tested the repaired engine housing with what appeared to be a standard diagnostic tool. Helps keep you alert during long shifts. Fascinating. On Salmer, we use meditation cycles to maintain focus. This chemical approach is much more immediate. Different planets, different solutions. Beth's diagnostic scanner chirped approvingly. Looks like your engine's running clean now. Should get you home without any problems. As the Solmari prepared to depart, Senior Engineer Kethmori approached Beth with what Thek'vil recognized as a formal gesture of respect. Security guard Beth, your assistance has been invaluable. If I may ask, what is your technical background? Your diagnostic capabilities suggest advanced engineering training. Beth finished wiping down her tools. Just picked up stuff over the years. My dad was handy with machinery, and you learn a lot working different jobs. She paused. Plus, engines are engines, you know. Doesn't matter if it's a tractor or a starship. They all need fuel, air, and a way to get rid of heat. Everything else is just details. Kethmori's optical sensors flickered again. That is remarkably accurate, actually. After the Velthari departed, Thek'vil made his way down to Bay 7, where Beth was finishing her post-incident paperwork. Grond and his fellow Korvaxi had apparently witnessed the entire repair operation and were now engaged in an animated discussion with Jimmy about something involving proper tool organization. Beth, Thek'vil said, approaching carefully. That was impressive work. Thanks, pretty straightforward once you figured out what was wrong. She signed off on her report and handed it to him. Though I should probably mention that I'm not technically qualified for major engineering repairs. Might want to note that in the log. Thek'vil accepted the report, scanning its contents. Beth had documented the entire repair process in precise detail, including her diagnostic methodology and the specific modifications made. Reading between the lines, he realized she had essentially revolutionized standard Velthari maintenance procedures through what she described as common-sense mechanical principles. One question, he said, how did you know the Velthari would accept your guidance? They're not known for welcoming outside technical input. Beth considered this. Well, they had a problem they couldn't solve, and I had a solution that worked. Seemed pretty simple. She gathered her tools into what appeared to be a converted lunchbox. Plus, most people appreciate it when you actually listen to what they're telling you instead of just assuming you know better. And the coffee service, Jimmy's idea. He figured they'd been dealing with a stressful situation and could use something nice. Beth headed toward the bay exit. Besides, caffeine helps with technical work. Learned that from my brother, he's an actual engineer. Always said the best solutions come when you're properly fueled. As Beth disappeared around the corner, Thek'vil found himself reviewing the day's incidents with growing bewilderment. 3 separate crises had been resolved through what could only be described as applied common sense, enhanced by an apparently inexhaustible supply of food and beverages. His comm unit chimed with a message from Station Administrator Vortok. Subcommander, please prepare a full report on today's efficiency improvements. Bay productivity is up 60%. We've received 3 formal commendations from visiting ships, and somehow our food budget has become a line item in the Diplomatic Relations Fund. Also, the Galactic Trade Council wants to know if we're interested in hosting a cultural exchange program. Apparently, word is spreading about our innovative approach to interspecies cooperation. Thek'vil looked out at the docking bays, where the normal chaos of cargo operations had been replaced by something that looked suspiciously like organized cooperation. Korvaxi Berserkers were efficiently moving containers under human supervision, while a group of newly arrived Thrakari traders were apparently engaged in animated conversation with Jimmy about proper hydration protocols. In the center of it all, he could see Beth making her rounds with her usual cup of coffee and casual competence, turning what should have been a stressful shift into what appeared to be a social gathering with occasional work breaks. His translator offered another new term, routine diplomatic revolution. Thek'vil supposed that was as good a description as any for human security work. He opened a new incident report and began typing. Day 1 of apparent systemic reorganization of station operations through application of Terran hospitality protocols. Recommend immediate expansion of the food, services, budget, and formal recognition of Guard Beth's contributions to interspecies relations. Also recommend hazard pay increase for all personnel, not for danger, but for grocery expenses and potential diplomatic immunity requirements. He paused, then added, note, human definition of Routine Tuesday may require revision of standard security protocols galaxy-wide. Through his viewport, Grond was now teaching a group of newly arrived aliens what appeared to be advanced cargo stacking techniques, while Beth supervised with the relaxed confidence of someone who had turned first contact into a regularly scheduled social event. Thek'vil's mandibles clicked in what he was learning to recognize as amusement. Perhaps this was what humans meant when they talked about job satisfaction. If you loved seeing Beth turn a crisis into customer service, wait until you see what happens when humans apply retail experience to galactic warfare.